The trembling fingers of Duke Tomas of Balderon clutched the armrest of his wheelchair as if it were the last solid thing anchoring him to the world. Around him, the grand royal ballroom shimmered beneath thousands of candles, their golden light reflecting off marble floors polished to perfection. Music floated through the vast space, violins weaving elegant melodies meant to celebrate unity, beauty, and power. Yet none of it reached him. The glances of the courtiers cut deeper than any blade he had faced on the battlefield. They came in waves, curious, pitying, amused, and cruel. Laughter drifted softly, carefully masked behind silk fans and crystal goblets, refined enough to pass as etiquette, sharp enough to wound. One by one, nobles shifted their positions, stepping subtly away from him until an invisible void formed at the center of the dance floor. And there he remained, alone, exposed, displayed. From the edge of the hall, partially hidden behind a marble column, Clara de la Vega watched. She was a servant, a nobody, trained to blend into walls, to lower her eyes, to hear everything and say nothing. She had learned early that invisibility was survival. But even from the shadows, she could see what the others pretended not to. The tightening of the Duke's jaw, the gradual draining of color from his face, the white knuckles gripping the chair as humiliation settled over him like a suffocating cloak. The music faltered. Conversation dimmed. Silence descended, thick and heavy, when Clara made a decision that would shatter her life as she knew it. She stepped forward. Her heart pounded as she crossed the ballroom, her simple shoes echoing softly against the marble. Heads turned, whispers rippled outward. Candlelight illuminated her calm expression as she stopped before Duke Tomas, lowered herself into a perfect bow, and did the unthinkable. She extended her arm. "If you will allow me, Your Grace," she said clearly. Time itself seemed to pause. For 3 days, the sealed envelope had rested untouched on Duke Tomas's desk. He had left it there deliberately, as though ignoring it might erase its existence. The royal crest stamped into the wax glimmered faintly, a symbol that usually meant honor. To him, it felt like a verdict already passed. "I cannot refuse it, can I?" he asked quietly. Martin, his longtime steward, stood near the window, hands folded behind his back as snow fell gently beyond the glass. "I'm afraid not, my lord. His Majesty has been insistent." Thomas's fingers traced the scar that ran along his left cheek, a remnant of a battle that had taken far more than skin. 2 years had passed since that day, 2 years since he had returned to court not as a conquering hero, but as a reminder of war's cost, uncomfortable, inconvenient, best kept out of sight. "Fernando is behind this," Tomas murmured. "My cousin enjoys spectacle. He wants them to see what I've become." Martin adjusted the heavy blanket draped over his lord's lifeless legs. "You are still a hero of the realm." Tomas let out a bitter breath. Heroes die on the field. Those who survive like this become warnings. At last he broke the seal. The golden script gleamed with cruel elegance. "His Majesty commands the presence of Duke Tomas of Balderon to the annual royal ball." Each word mocked him. "Prepare my finest attire," Tomas said after a long pause. "If I must be paraded, I will at least be dignified." That same afternoon, Clara received her own orders. She stood among the other servants in the service wing as the head housekeeper delivered instructions with her usual efficiency. "You will serve, you will observe, you will not speak unless spoken to, and under no circumstances will you interact with the guests." Clara nodded. She did not know that her obedience would end that night. In his chambers, Tomas studied his reflection. The formal uniform fit perfectly, medals polished until they caught the light. The image of a decorated duke stared back at him above a wheelchair that had become inseparable from his identity. "The medals shine well, sir," Martin said softly. "For battles no one remembers," Tomas replied. "I would trade them all for my legs." Elsewhere, in the palace corridors, Clara prepared crystal trays with steady hands. Years of labor had roughened her skin, but her movements were precise. Few knew her secret. She could read and write. Her father, once a monastery scribe, had taught her in secret before illness claimed him. "They say the crippled duke will attend," whispered Matilde, another maid. "Some think it will be entertaining." Clara remained silent. She remembered the duke from before the war, reserved, proud, but never cruel. Now, defeat lived in every line of his posture. When the herald announced, "His Excellency Duke Tomas of Balderon," the ballroom stilled. Martin pushed the wheelchair forward with ceremonial care. Tomas kept his face composed, though he felt every stare. "How brave," a duchess murmured, loud enough to be heard. "His Majesty is generous," replied her companion. From the edge of the hall, partially hidden behind a marble column, Clara de la Vega watched. "It may not come to that," Martin said, "but I do not think it will be easy." From there, it was a downward spiral. Tomas sat alone, exposed, the sickening feeling of being publicly mocked rising in his throat. Fernando's smile sharpened. "You do know how you'll manage the dances." Tomas sat immobile, trapped in a circle of elegance and scorn. Martin tried to reach him, but was subtly blocked. And then Clara moved. She set down her tray. She crossed the ballroom. She offered her arm. The aftermath was swift and brutal. Clara was dragged to the kitchens, suspended from duty, accused, watched. "You have humiliated the court. You touched a duke." Clara said nothing. That night, Tomas could not sleep. "That girl," Tomas said, "find her name." "Clara de la Vega, sir. 3 years in service, and now in trouble. Protect her." "I will try." 3 days later, Clara was accused of theft. A lie, carefully crafted. Fernando wanted revenge. What followed was accusation, confinement, whispered threats, and an approaching trial whose verdict was already decided. Yet defiance had been awakened. Secret meetings followed. In shadowed corridors and forgotten libraries, Tomas and Clara spoke, not as duke and servant, but as two people bound by truth. "Why did you do it?" he asked her. "Because no one deserves to be humiliated, not even a duke." In time, Clara learned the truth. Tomas knew of Fernando's corruption. He had remained silent to protect those beneath him. And in doing so, she said quietly, "You allowed injustice to thrive." Her disappointment hurt more than any insult, and it changed him. The night before the trial, Tomas wrote until dawn. Confessions, evidence, names. "Take this to Captain Mendoza," he told Martin, "at dawn. What will happen to you?" "Whatever must," Tomas smiled faintly. The confrontation came at sunrise, in the same ballroom where everything had begun. Under natural light, without masks, without music, truth echoed louder. Fernando fell. Lies unraveled. Clara was cleared. Tomas confessed his silence. Justice followed. And when all was done, when titles trembled and power shifted, Clara asked for only one thing, her name. Not compensation, not privilege, dignity. It was granted. Later, alone once more in the ballroom, Tomas found Clara gazing at the windows. "You should be celebrating," he said. "I prefer quiet." He hesitated, then extended his arm. "May I offer you my arm this time?" She placed her hand on his. They did not dance. They simply turned toward the light, and in that shared stillness they danced a waltz without music, a waltz of truth, courage, and dignity reclaimed.